Hello, everyone. Marc Sabatella here with the Mastering MuseScore School, and welcome to the MuseScore Café for today, Wednesday, September 2nd, 2020. And great to see people here. And I'm, as always, going to do my little technical check and make sure that I am broadcasting when I think I am, and that the sound is here. And I'm on a little delay, so stall, stall, stall. So this is my weekly series of chats where I talk about some aspect of making music with MuseScore. And here I am. Wow, I'm about 30 seconds behind, it seems. Okay, so hello everyone. It's so good to see people here, and I see a bunch of people that I kind of met through the project, the We Gather Together project that we did the last couple of weeks. So I might talk about that real briefly in here as well. Um, but the main topic that I've chosen to talk about for this week is text, which I realize text is part of a lot of musical scores, and I've alluded to it a lot, but I've never really spent a whole cafe episode just talking about text. So I'm always happy to answer other unrelated questions and all, but there is so much to talk about with respect to text, so many different types of text, and different things MuseScore can do with it, and different limitations that you need to know about, different workarounds and all. So anyhow, I'm just going to kind of just jump through a lot of different stuff about using text in MuseScore. So by all means, hey, hello to Jeff. I miss Jeff too. All right, so let me just dive in a little bit first. So the We Gather Together thing, I was just a lot of fun, and since I see a couple people here who did participate in that, I want to give you a shout out and thank you so much to those of you who did participate. I want to what I'm going to do actually is go to musescore.com and show you what I have now done. So in the cafe, the last actual cafe I did 2 weeks ago, I showed you my work in progress. I was working on that arrangement, and then last week, in lieu of the cafe, of course, I did this special session where we did kind of a live recording thing, and that was a lot of fun. It's kind of chaotic and crazy, but it was definitely fun. So what I've done now is I uploaded the audio that we all did together on BandLab, and now I've made that audio be the source on MuseScore.com. So this is a thing you can do. I don't know if you need a pro account to do it, but under here, under the mixer, no, it's not under the, well, that's where I select audio source. I think the place where you create it is in the menu here, manage audio sources. And if you do that, you get walked through a bunch of stuff where you can synchronize your score to a YouTube video. And then you can make it either show the video or not show the video. And in our case, we didn't really have anything that interesting to show. So, but anyhow, check this out. Give it a sec.
We gather together to ask the Lord's blessing. He chastens and hastens His will to make known. The wicked oppressing now cease from distressing. Sing praises to His name. He forgets not His own. His kindness to cry us our God with His journey, ordaining, maintaining His kingdom near us. So from the beginning, afar in the beginning, the Lord will at our side and will
just so much fun putting this whole project together and working with all of you people who helped sing, play instruments, and so forth. It was just a blast, an absolute blast. So I'm going to start with this score to just talk about the different kinds of text that are actually involved in it. So let me actually, I think I've got it still in my recent scores here. We gather together. Here it is. So yeah, there's a whole ton of types of text just in this score, and I figure we can talk about what some of these things are. So let me remember to start my little monitor thing where it can show you what I'm typing. Uh, and so that if I use shortcuts and forget to tell you what shortcuts I'm using, it can use it. No, uh, that's not it. There's the one I want. Okay, so now as I type shortcuts, yeah, you'll see them, and this keeps shutting itself off every once in a while, so I apologize for that. So just looking at this score here, you can see a whole bunch of things. And yeah, thanks to all of you for being here. You guys, it's so fun and energetic. It energizes me to be participating in this and having so many people here. So just look at the different kinds of text that are in here. This is title, and then we have composer, and these are sitting here in a frame. Then we have tempo, we have dynamics. This is a rehearsal mark. We have staff names here, and these are the long staff names there, but then, or instrument names. Then we have the short instrument names. The long instrument name is used on the first system of the score, and then subsequent systems use these abbreviated names. And then we have chord symbols here above our fret diagrams, and of course we have lyrics. I think I mentioned the tempo. There's a copyright message here. That's in the footer. And what else we got? There's, I think, the only probably other thing is at the very end we have this rallentando marking, which is actually system text. And so I'll talk about what all these things are. Yeah, we'll just see how to work with these things because it actually matters. How you create your text. There's different kinds of text for different purposes. So I will be interested if people have questions about anything in particular, especially related to the topic. If it's not related, go ahead and ask anyhow, and I'll get to it if I can. So what I want to do is I'm going to start a new score here. And okay, so right off the bat, when I do a demonstration, I will usually skip this first dialogue, but it's not something I want to skip today. It's actually relevant. The title that you type into this dialogue, the title I typed into the dialogue, and then let's just fill it all out. The subtitle, me, I wrote this. Someone else wrote the lyrics. Copyright. Okay, so the copyright field here, I would love it if I could type the copyright symbol right now. Unfortunately, I'm on a Chromebook right now, and if there is a way to access the copyright symbol on this Chromebook, I don't know what it is. Probably there is a way, but I don't know it. So there's a couple ways around that. One is to find somewhere else where you have a copyright symbol and then paste it. So let me actually do that. I'm going to just open up Google Docs, because Google Docs, I think, will automatically replace the if I type into a Google Doc. Let's find out. I forget if it does it automatically or not. If not, then let's see. Parentheses. Come on. See, close parenthesis. There we go. So I typed parentheses, C, close parentheses, and it turned into a copyright symbol. So now I can copy that, and I can come back into MuseScore and paste it. Oh, no! That didn't work. Did I not copy it? I thought I did. Copy. There it is. Okay, I somehow missed my Control C. All right, so now I can put my copyright in there. 2020 Marc Sabatella. All right. And and then also when I choose my instruments, if you pick any of these templates, they set up things for you. If you choose instruments yourself, you'll get the name. So let me actually just create something for flute and bassoon. That'll be my duet because and vocal, because we know we're going to want lyrics at some point. Voice. And I want the voice at the top, so I'm going to move it to the top with the arrow buttons there. Let's keep going through the wizard, because actually, if I choose a tempo marking here, if I choose the tempo I want here, then that's actually going to show up in the score. So let me type 140 as my tempo, just so we can see that that happened. There you go. So when I hit finish now, you see all the stuff that I entered is here in the score, and it all actually has meaning. Well, not all of it, but like this title here is actually recorded with the score, and then if you generate an MP3 file, I think it becomes part of the metadata. Although don't quote me on that. But it also then, if I try to save this score right now, you'll see that that becomes the suggested file name. So it's using the title for that. The composer also gets associated with the score in a way that is useful. And by the way, if you don't type your information into that box when you first start, you can come to score properties and get to it later. Like if I had accidentally not gotten that copyright symbol, if I had not gotten the copyright symbol right away, here's how I can do it. I can edit the title, and then down here, while you're editing text, you have this toolbar down here for changing, bold. You can like make individual letters bold. This, by the way, this text toolbar down at the bottom is not something you would normally be using just to change the overall font size for your text. The inspector is where that's going to happen. And so I'll talk about that distinction in a little bit. But this is where, like, if you wanted just one word to be bold, you can make just that word bold. But if you want the whole thing bold, you would do it over here. And that makes the whole thing bold. Well, it would have if I hadn't made one word bold. So yeah, it would have. I can change the size of it here. I'm hitting the up arrow and it's not recording it, but not reporting it, but it's the truth. So anyhow, I was going at this button here. This button here is what allows you to insert special characters into your text. So by special characters, I mean things like all of these musical symbols here. And there's a shortcut for that. It's F2. And yes, so as I mentioned, my little doohickey that tries to record keystrokes turns itself off periodically, and that's just sort of a drag. But here's the copyright symbol. So all I got to do is click there, and now I have it in my text. Now I can select it in the text. So if you didn't want to use Google Docs or whatever to create the copyright symbol, you can use that special characters, then go back to score properties and paste yourself some more copyright symbols, So that's how you could also get the copyright symbol in there. So anyhow, that's some stuff with this text. And by the way, this title frame here has a title, it has subtitle, it has composer, it has lyricist, but you can add other random text to it. You can just right-click it and say add, and there's other things you can attach. So I could just add text, just plain text, and then you can type whatever you want. Here is some more text. This text, by default, will show up top right. All these other things are positioned according to kind of standard positioning for things. But over here in the inspector are the controls for that. You'll see it's right aligned. Well, I can make it be centered. I mean, that's left aligned right now, or I can make it centered, or I can make it right aligned. It's aligned to the top of the frame, but I can make it be the middle of the frame or the bottom of the frame. So that's a way to position things the way you want, maybe centered and at the bottom was a good place. And then also, if you look at this frame and say, hey, look, it's everything is too squished together, I can just make that frame a little bigger, and the stuff that's attached to the bottom of the frame will move with the frame. And because I don't particularly like dragging things, I'm just going to type a number into my height box because I like round numbers. I'm just funny that way. So that's all stuff just having to do with title frames. Now, the tempo that we entered at the beginning, remember, I entered 140. Well, now it shows up in the text there. And let me zoom in. I'm just doing a control mouse wheel to zoom here. This quarter note here is also from that special characters palette. So if I press F2, it brings up that special characters palette, and you see that here are those note symbols, and I can make that be instead I could add a dot. Where's my cursor? If I add a dot, then now there's a dot there. Or a space between them. There's a special space that's sized just right to put between a note and a dot. I can add whatever other crazy symbols I might want. Let me go back in there. Let's see what other interesting symbols were in there. I could add all these various different special characters that are used, in languages other than English. And I know some of you speak languages that use all these other letters. So the fact that they're all there in special characters is kind of nice. Now, one thing about the special characters palette that's good to know is when I'm adding things from it, notice that all I did, let me do this again, I'll go to special characters, and all I have to do is click, and it adds that character. By the way, there's also, these are the common symbols that, someone decided were common enough to want to have in here. But you can also come here to where it says musical symbols, and there's like every symbol in the music fonts we use is available in here, and it's thousands of symbols. So if you want there to be this picture of a symbol in the middle of your text, boom, you got a picture of your symbols in the text. It's just, what is this? German Renaissance lute tablature. So there you go. German Renaissance lute tablature symbols. All sorts of stuff. There's thousands upon thousands of symbols. And so if you do a lot of German lute tablature, maybe you're going to say, you know what? I wish these characters were easier for me to get to. So instead of having to go into that dialog box. So let's go ahead and deal with that right now. I'm going to add a palette. So I'm going to click let me close this first. If I click the text palette and then say add palettes, it's going to let me add a new palette here, create a custom palette, and I'm going to call it my custom palette, because why not? And it gets created up here at the top of the list, and you can, then drag it elsewhere if you want. But check this out now. If I go back, I'm still in the editing this text, so let me reopen the special characters palette. Boom. That isn't working when I'm dragging that there. I think that's maybe because I really need to leave that text edit and come back. I think maybe it was a little messed up, but let's find out now. Drag that thing in. Well, that's weird. That's supposed to work. So as it often happens when you go to do a demo, something goes wrong, right? But trust me, this is supposed to work. So why isn't that working? I'm not entirely positive. And that kind of stuff bothers me. But let's see. Oops, I accidentally dragged this. I can also, by the way, drag stuff from my score. So if I know I often want that text, someone else wrote the lyrics, I can Control-Shift, drag it. Oops. Try that again. Control-Shift, drag into palette. And now I can easily add that same text just by clicking it in the palette, except I think this is text in the frame rather than text that you can attach to notes, so that won't actually work. So I'm probably doing nothing but confusing people. I'm going to delete that from the palette because that was worthless. But let me go back to that special characters palette and see if maybe now it'll behave itself. Now it's behaving itself. Ooh, look at that. I was not dragging to the proper place. Check that out. Okay. So drag to the proper place and you can do it. So I can just copy these elements one by one into the palette if I want them all. Now, can I copy them all? Can I like do some sort of drag selection to, looks like, I don't think there's a way to like multiply select these things. Yeah, I don't think so. So you'd have to kind of drag them in one by one if you wanted to do that. But more likely, you don't want a whole palette full. Maybe there's just a couple of symbols that you want. Well, this is how you could get them. And I've actually done that in my own palettes. Like this is like a palette that I created for the purpose of demonstrations here. But in my own editing palette, my own editing workspace, I created a new workspace up here. Then I have things like here. Let me type in this text here. I have a 6 and a 7 superscripted because I add them a lot when I'm writing worksheets. These are the diminished and half diminished symbols, and I use these things a lot because I create a lot of educational worksheets. And so I can very easily add them then from my own palette here. So those are some of the things that you might want to do when you're adding, special characters into your text. You can populate your own custom palette with them. Let me go back to my test palette here. All right, so that's all some kind of general stuff. Let me talk about a little more general things here, because I mentioned about size in the inspector here. Is where you would set like the size for this entire element here. So if I change it from 12 to 20, now my tempo is big. If I enter another tempo, and let me do that, I'm going to enter a tempo. So I guess I'm talking about tempo now. I can use the tempo palette here and maybe use this one here. Maybe I'll just use Adagio. It's still at 12 point because I only changed this one. Well, if I come back to this guy, and now you see it's set at 20, if I hit the S button here, set as style, that makes 20 point the default for all tempo elements. And now every time I add a tempo, it'll be at 20 point. So that setting as style, using the inspector to set some properties of a type of text, and then using the set as style to make it apply to all elements of that type. So this is tempo text. There's other types of text. Notice it didn't affect any other text in the score. It didn't affect the title or the instrument name or anything. Or if I had staff text, which is Control T, it doesn't affect that either. Staff text is defaults to 10. Well, I could change that to be smaller, maybe be 6-point font, and then I could set that to be the default for staff text. And now I can add other staff text. Here's more Control T, more staff text, and it's also really small. So, or if you want one text to be bigger than the rest, just change it to be bigger, but don't hit the set as style button, and then your style is still 6-point, but that one is bigger. So those are all things that are kind of common to all kinds of text, just working with the text. By the way, while you're editing the text, let's go back to my title. We have implemented most of the standard kind of word processor type shortcuts. So left and right arrows move to the left or to the right. Control left and right move a word at a time, just like it does in most word processors. You can select with shift right arrow or shift left arrow, and also shift control right arrow. Shift control right arrow selects a word at a time. And then you can copy and paste over here. So copy and paste and all that kind of stuff works while you're in here. You can also, I think, double click to select a word, triple click. I thought triple click was maybe going to select a whole line, but it doesn't seem to be. Oh, there it is. I just didn't quite get it fast enough. So there you go. If you hit enter at the end of this text, you have multiple lines. And I think triple click when I do it fast enough or properly. I think I'm just not good at triple clicking because I never do it. It actually selects everything, not just the current line. That's what I wanted to find out. So, coming soon will be control over the line spacing. Notice that the spacing between those lines, and here, let me make that frame bigger so that we have a little more breathing room. So, oh, by the way, here's another little trick. When you have overlapping items, if I click right here, it looks like it's trying to select the title. But if I want to get to the subtitle, I can control click and it will select what's underneath the thing that's selected. And so now that actually selected the frame. And then I control click again and it selects the subtitle. So anyhow, there's multiple things that you can do. Control click will kind of cycle through any overlapping elements. So I'm going to increase that Y offset to get that subtitle a bit lower. There we go. And anyhow, the spacing between these lines is whatever is in the font. Coming in an upcoming release will be controls over that line spacing. I'm not sure if it's going to make it into 3.6 or not. 3.6 is probably coming within a month or so, is my guess. So the large time signatures is been implemented, but it's not, for compatibility reasons, there's probably very little of that code that can make it into 3.6. But for MuseScore 4, which is the better part of a year away, MuseScore 4 will have greatly improved time signature formatting control. So I can't promise what's going to be in 3.6 right now. There, I think, is maybe something that they've worked out, but I forget. I'll talk about MuseScore 3.6 once the beta happens. We're going to have a beta release probably within a week or so, is my guess. And then I'll get to show you some more about that. But notice what happens here. I'm going to click the time signature. There is at least these scaling things here. So I can turn up the scale of this, and maybe I want the X, a little bit fatter, but mostly a lot taller. And now I've got large time signatures, right? So I can have large time signatures already by using this. Now, there are limitations to that, like you probably want them to be between the staves and not on the staff like that. I know that's a common thing. So then you could also play with the position of these things and position them to be, whatever it takes to make them between the staves, I guess. And that's entirely too big, so let's make them about twice as big as normal. And so anyhow, you can play with these things and get different effects as far as the positioning of the things. And then you can also make it so some staves display the time signature and some don't, right? I can right click a staff properties, and say, hey, don't show time signatures on that staff. And boom, now that one's gone. So there's a lot of control you already have over things like that, but there's a lot more coming. Let's put it that way. And by the way, MuseScore elves is often a term that's used. I think elves in general as like the people who do the work, the behind the scenes work, coding. And of course, right now we're in Christmas season, and so elves feels especially appropriate. But yeah, there is going to be a MuseScore 3.6 release, and it may or may not happen before Christmas, but it'll be a pretty nice Christmas present because it's actually pretty cool. There's a lot of nice improvements that are going to be made to the appearance of scores by default. Nothing is maybe dramatic as what happened when we went from MuseScore 2 to MuseScore 3 and we implemented all this collision avoidance. But things like, well, first of all, there's new fonts. There'll be a new default font for music and for text. And we'll do things like, remember when I created my test score here, I added the flute, then I added the bassoon, then I added the voice, and I had to move the voice up to the top. Well, that kind of stuff will happen automatically, the positioning of things. Well, I moved it up to the top because that's where I wanted it. To be honest, I don't know that that's standard. Like, it depends on what kind of score you're dealing with. I think if you're dealing with a vocal score, the voices go on the top, then the instruments. But if you're dealing with an orchestral score, the voices might show up in the middle. So it all kind of varies depending on the type of score. And that is also where 3.6 will be smart about that also. It'll try to know what kind of score you're creating based on the template you started from or based on other things. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff happening with that. So anyhow, there's time signature. These instrument names that are here, if you want to edit these, like instead of voice, maybe you want to say vocal, you can double click it and it will bring up the staff properties, because this voice isn't just a plain piece of text. It's actually automatically generated for the staff. And that's a little maybe more clear when it comes to the abbreviated version that shows up on the next system. This is attached to measure 17 right now, but all I have to do is put a line break here after the fourth measure, and now suddenly I've got a new piece of text right there on measure 5. So this isn't just plain text. You don't edit it directly. It gets sort of generated while we're deciding how many measures to put on a line and stuff. So to edit it, it's part of the staff properties. And so I can make this say vocal and make this say folk if I want. And then when I hit OK, you'll see that has changed. And vocal. So that's instrument names. So I'm trying to show a lot of general things before I show some more specific things, but there's always more specific things to show. So I talked about staff text. Well, what is staff text? Staff text is text attached to a staff. I have 3 staves here. This staff text is only attached to the voice staff. If I start filling all of this, let me just quickly fill it with some notes. Yeah, I love how it's actually catching up to me. I apparently hit 45 of them. There we go. My computer is, as people have learned from these things, I believe, insanely slow while I'm broadcasting, because it just apparently is a hog. There we go. So I have my staff text here, and let me delete. Oh, when I copied, notice. Let me undo that last copy. When I copied, I'll redo it. It copied everything, including the text. I actually didn't want that. I wanted it to only copy the notes. So if I'd wanted it not to copy the text, I could go to View, Selection Filter, and tell it, don't copy other text. You see the other text meaning other than dynamics here, because there's separate control for all these things. So now when I copy and paste, I get the notes only. I don't get an extra copy of all that staff text and all. And then I can reselect it because I probably want to copy the text the next time. So anyhow, the staff text is attached to that staff only. There's also, and when I say that, if I go to File, Parts, All Parts, and generate my parts, you'll see in the voice part, there's that staff text. In the flute part, there's that staff text that I deliberately edited to say stiff text, so you can see it's different. And then the bassoon part doesn't have that text at all. It has the tempo markings, because the tempo markings apply to all staves. Staff text applies just to the type of just to the staff it's attached to. Well, if I want there to be text that is on all staves, then system text is what I use. Control-Shift-T will add system text. And if you don't remember shortcuts, they're right here in the text palette. Staff text and system text down here. So system text will show up on the top staff of the score, just like tempos do. But when I go to visit the parts, where did I add that thing? There's my system text. And when I visit the other parts, you'll see, hey, look, there's the system text there too. And here's the system text there too. It added the system text to all the parts, even though it's only on the top staff of the score. That's what system text refers to. So if you have something you want to appear on all parts, but only once in the score, you added a system text. Tempo markings are already system text. So are rehearsal markings. If I click here and add a rehearsal mark, by the way, when I click the rehearsal mark, it will automatically kind of letter them for me, which is kind of cool. B, C, and so forth. Or you can use the keyboard shortcut Control-M and then type the letter yourself. And by the way, if these all ever get out of sequence, like maybe I decide, you know what, I don't really need this one at letter B. Let's delete that one. Well, now my letters are kind of out of sequence. I can select all of my score and then say Tools, Resequence Rehearsal Marks. Boom. And then it updates the other ones to go in order. So instead of ACD, it's ABC, like I expect. So the rehearsal marks are also system text. They show up in all the parts. Furthermore, they have the special quality that they break. All system text actually has the special property that it will break multi-measure rests. So here's A, here's B, here's C. When I go visit the flute part, you'll see now there's multi-measure rest, and the rehearsal marks automatically break those, as does any other form of system text, because it's assumed that, hey, this is something that we're putting there that all the people should see. It shouldn't get eaten up in the middle of a multi-measure rest. So staff text appears just on one staff. System text appears on all staves. Then we have fingering. There's so many different kinds of text that I'm just going to kind of show you. Most of these texts in here, I'll come back to fingering in a second, but the texts that you see in here are really just special staff texts, special system texts, and so forth. These aren't really mostly other kinds of text, except for this changed instrument, which I'll come to later. But like this pizzicato marking, that if I add an actual violin staff, I pressed I, and let's add a bowed string, a violin. If I put some notes here on the violin staff, and then I click here and click Pits, you'll see, well, first of all, it's tiny because I previously changed my font size for staff text to be tiny. Let's put something more reasonable. How about 12? All right, now my staff text is 12. Let's listen to this. Okay, so because there's other notes there, maybe you're not focusing on the piano, but the violin, but let's hear it. And it got slower because of that adagio. Let's get rid of that marking. So these tempo markings affect the tempo, obviously. By the way, that's because they have settings in the inspector, and if you can't see it because of my face, sorry, but I think you probably still can. There's the tempo settings down here in the inspector that let you control what the actual tempo is of each of those markings. So these are staff texts that are pre-programmed to do things for the playback. Same with this swing. If I add myself some notes here, let's add some flutes, some eighth notes. and I play this, it's just plain eighth notes. But if I add a swing text to the beginning of my score, now when I play it, it's swinging, more or less. Um, so these are all things that you can set up for any text. I can right-click this swing text, and then it's actually system text. It'll show up just at the top of the score, but apply to all staves. So then system text properties, and you'll see swing settings here. And then therefore there are settings here that control the actual swing ratio. Similarly, for that pizzicato, when I right-click it, you'll see this is staff text rather than system text. You'll see there are swing settings, but there's also this change channel, and this is what allows the playback. You can control which voices you want it to change the channel for, so you can change just voice 2 to be something different, a different sound than voice 1, which can be very useful. And so here's where you select which sound gets used. Violins have 3 different sounds they can use, and this is pre-programmed to use the pizzicato sound. So you can do that yourself. You can create your own text and give them these properties, but these are ones that are pre-programmed for you. Same with mute and open for brass instruments. A relatively new addition to the palettes, I don't remember when it got added, is these little texts here, which actually do allow you, like if I have this SA, I think what this does, boy, let me go into the, I think all it does is it gives you, to be honest, I forget how these ones work because they were just added, but it does have to do with this idea of maybe being able to have independent playback control of the 2 voices. But I think in order for that to work, you might have to add the staff as something other than voice. And yeah, I should know that, but I don't, because it's, like I said, it's new. Oh yeah, by the way, so swing by default is a system text, but I see you're talking about making it as staff text. So by default, the swing in the palette is system text. But if you want, like the drums, to have a different sense of swing, like maybe the drums are going to have a more, that's pretty typical, ding, 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 a really exaggerated swing, but the melodic instruments a less exaggerated swing, or you want a straight eighths groove, and while the other instruments swing, you can do that. You can just add your own staff text and say, like, well, I'll say swing here. And then I can go in to, and now this is staff text, so it's going to apply only to that staff text. And I can go to staff text and make its swing settings be something different. I can have it be super duper exaggerated, 90%. So now, yeah, that's so exaggerated you can barely even tell that it was doing that it was even playing the other eighth notes. But if I make it be maybe 80%, is you'll be able to actually hear. Actually, even 75 will be literally dotted eighth 16th. So let's hear that. I could have that, but then I could have the voice. I hit Q. That I entered a quarter note by mistake. I hit Q. It turns it into an eighth note. Q halves the duration of things. So boom. So now you'll see the flute's going to have super exaggerated swing, but the voice will have normal swing. It's actually pretty exaggerated sounding because 140 is a little fast for that amount of swing. Let me turn the tempo down, turn it down to 100. In fact, let me just make this be, it's trying to follow the text here, so I want it to be quarter note equals 100 and get rid of all that other crap that I added there while I was playing with it. All right, so now it's going to be 100. So if you were, paying attention there, you could tell this is a more exaggerated swing on the flute. And the voice is less exaggerated. So yeah, you can have independent controls there. Okay. SA works on the women instrument. Thank you so much. Thank you. So glad to know that. So voice, if I add women as my instrument, oh, this is cool. I'm looking forward to this. I'm gonna just cut this because I can cut and paste this text. So let me cut it from here, and then paste it here. Actually, let me paste it over here where there's not much else going on. And now, when I click this text, right-click it, look at that. Oh, wow, that is so cool. It set voices 1 and 3 to be soprano and set voices 2 and 4 to be alto. That's kind of cool. And so then what that would allow me to do, let me change, I accidentally changed it to soprano. Just get out of there. So then I can have, let's check this out. I'll enter in the soprano and I'll enter in the alto. Nope. All right, good. So when I play this now, we hear them both, and we hear them both the same way. But if I go to the mixer, that's F10 to open the mixer. I'm going to go to the mixer, and now I'm going to, oops, I accidentally dragged. Oh, that's kind of interesting. I've never seen that happen before. I don't know what's going on with that. It's doing a weird dragging of things. And I accidentally clicked the sharp button too. So let me try that again. Open mixer, and this time I'll just drag it. But I want to open up the women channel here on the mixer by clicking the little arrow. And now I'll have to make it wider. You can see that there's sub-channels there. This was the button I clicked. And when you open it up, you see there's separate sub-channels for soprano and alto. So then I can do things like changing the sounds of these. I can make the sopranos sound like French horns, and make the altos sound like glockenspiels. You know, that's crazy to do, but you know, just so you can hear it. There you go. Probably more to the point is, instead of actually changing the sounds, you might have wanted to have gone in here and played with the volume so you could hear the soprano part louder than the alto, or the alto part louder than the soprano. So that especially if you're trying to use MuseScore to help you learn your music and you want to learn the alto part, that'll give you independent control of the volume of the parts. Or you could mute. Well, you can do that already, is just mute voice 1 or 2. You don't need the special sub-channel business. So anyhow, those were special text elements, but these are still just ordinary text. They're staff text elements. The change instrument is kind of cool because it literally will change the instrument. Like here's a flute. And in fact, let's go again to a spot in the score where there's nothing else going on. Let me delete all this stuff and add some flute notes here. So added a bunch of flute notes. Let's click here and go to change instrument. It's going to immediately know, and this is new with, I think, 3.5, that it immediately asks you what instrument you want to change to. Well, maybe that flute player should change to piccolo at that spot, or actually maybe it should change to, let's pretend that flute player also plays clarinet. We'll change to B-flat clarinet. And notice what it did. It automatically put text in there that says to B-flat clarinet, and it automatically transposed the notes, and it automatically added the appropriate key signature because it's a transposing instrument. And when I play it, right? So this is a magic type of text called an instrument change text. The tempo texts are magic in that they affect tempo. Dynamics are magic in that they affect the actual volume of things, right? So I can put in an F here, and then I can put in a double P over here, and you'll hear that. So dynamics are another, kind of special kind of text there. And there's fingering, which I mentioned a long time ago I wanted to get to, and I never did, but now I will. So if I have some notes here, let me actually add a piano. I'll add a piano, and I'm going to add a guitar. So on the piano staff, I can add some notes. And on the guitar staff, actually, when you add the piano staff, it doesn't get the bar lines connected by default. Hopefully that's fixed in 3.6, because those are the kinds of things that we worked to improve. But all I did was double click a bar line, drag it down, and it knows, oh, you meant them all. And so it'll connect all your piano staves for you. On the guitar staff, then, let's add some notes here. For the piano, I can add fingering here using these fingerings, and like that maybe is going to be with my 5th finger. Oops, I typed 4. I hit 4 instead. Let me try 5. Fingering has a special quality where you often want to enter a lot of it. So instead of having to use the palette for it, we added a command here, add text fingering here. And there's a shortcut. I don't remember if that's a default shortcut or if I had to define it myself, but Control-Alt-F. To define your own shortcuts, you've probably seen me do this before. Edit, Preferences, Shortcuts. And there's places to define all your own shortcuts for things here. So anyhow, I just added that 5 to the G. I'm double-clicking it to edit it. And now if I press space, it's moving on to the next note, the E, and I can type a 3, and then space moves on to the next note, 1. And then if there was another note on the staff, it would just move to the next note. So here, let me put some more notes. So let me use my shortcut now, Control-Alt-F, and 2, 4, 1. There we go. So I've just added fingerings by just typing them. On guitar, so this fingering placement is what you want on piano, but on guitar, that's not really the normal placement of fingering. Guitar is actually, the different people use different techniques, but what's probably more common is this other one here, where you put it to the left of the note. And so again, that's what happens when I use the palette. It'll automatically add it to the left here, because this is, as it says, guitar fingering, left-hand guitar fingering. These letters here, P, I, M, A, and C, are right-hand fingerings. Those appear above the note. They actually show up in more or less the same place that piano fingerings do. But I can also then double-click that one and hit space, and it'll move on to the next note. And let me enter those fingerings kind of really quickly just by typing them, press space, and move on to the next note. So those are kind of nice. So fingerings are attached to the individual note. Staff text is attached kind of the staff as a whole. System text shows up on the top staff and then all of the parts. Fingering is actually the only kind of text that applies to each note individually. So the other thing that we saw in We Gather Together that because I'm remembering what I showed off in here, is chord symbols. And so let me show an example of that. Those are, I can click a note, type Control-K for chord symbol, because Control-C is copy. So Control-K, and then I can just type my chord symbol, A7. If I hit space, it moves on like a beat at a time. There's beat 2, beat 3, beat 4, and then the next measure. So, and so forth. So I'm pressing space to move a beat at a time, or you can press tab to move a measure at a time. Lots of other fun stuff to know about chord symbols, and I've probably talked about them before. But chord symbols are just another type of text, and if you can't remember Control-K, under Add Text, you see all the different kinds of text. There it is, chord symbol. It's grayed out now because I'm in the middle of editing things, and it knows I can't add anything else. But yeah, Add Text. Where is it? Chord symbol. There we go. So that's chord symbol. As of like a few months ago, or maybe a year ago, we added Roman numeral analysis also. So I can click a note and add text Roman numeral analysis. And I've already defined a shortcut because I use this a lot. Control-Shift-R. No, I added Control. Well, I guess I made Control-Shift-R and Control-Alt-R. But in any case, now I can type... and it's going to have the same shortcuts like space to move on. Oops, I think I went too far. Shift space moves backwards, by the way. So yeah, and Roman numeral analysis automatically formats things, and it's pretty smart about it. If I type 6-5, it knows to stack the numbers there, and so yeah, the Roman numeral analysis facility automatically formats your Roman numerals. So those are some more things to know. By the way, position of things also, like if you say, hey, that's too high for those chord symbols, let me move this down. I'm going to use the arrow key, and it moves at 1/10 of a staff space at a time. And because I like round numbers, I'm going to do that 5 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now it's lower, and I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. Then I can come over to the inspector. This is the field here, the Y offset that I just adjusted. Hit set as style, and boom, all the other chord symbols move with it. MuseScore is capable of automatically aligning chord symbols. Like, for instance, if this note moves above the staff, suddenly these chord symbols aren't aligned anymore, but MuseScore can do that for you. You go to Format, Style. I've showed this before. I've showed a lot of this stuff before, but maybe not all in one place. Chord symbols, and now you'll see maximum shift above. That tells it how far it's going to be trying to shift things. Like if one chord symbol had been like way out of alignment, you can kind of say, well, don't move everything that far. You can kind of put a maximum on it. So like if I tell it to only move 1 staff space, nothing happens. If I tell it to go ahead and move 2 staff spaces, still nothing. But if I tell it to move 3, now, okay, it went ahead and aligned it. And then if I tell it to move 6, it's not going to move it more. It just means, if necessary, it will move it as much as 6 staff spaces. So that's how to align things above the staff, and you can independently control the alignment of things below the staff. Lyrics, Control L enters lyrics, and again, space moves to the next note. And here, there's no next beat or next measure. It's just always about the next note. And shift space moves backwards. And so lyrics are their own thing, but if I type 5, if I want that to be a melisma, 5, I'm going to type 5, and then I'll type an underscore, and that lets it be a melisma line like that. So I've apparently been sitting for an hour, and the light just turned off. So that's how you enter melisma lines. And then also maybe you want to see what happens when I get to 7. So 6, hyphen, then, and it moves on to the next note. So probably you've all figured that out about lyrics by now. But if not, there you are. That's about entering lyrics. This covers, I think, just about all of the text types, but actually an easy one way that I want to make sure that I show you, because I gotta make sure I show you stuff, is in my online course. So I will be diligent and go ahead and put links. If you haven't already signed up for my online course, this is the kind of stuff that I go into detail, but not in this rough haphazard. I'm focused. I promise you, I'm capable of focusing when I'm not reading from a script, but I'm reading from a bullet list of things, and I am really focused, and I have here's 10 minutes just about chord symbols, and you learn everything you need to know about chord symbols in 10 minutes and so forth. I'm going to come back to these comments that I see work their way in while I was just talking about that. But anyhow, I want to take a look at where I was. This is what the course looks like when you're in there, and this is all the stuff about text. So there's the basics, which is just about entering them, and then this is about those style things, the stuff you saw in the properties. And then I talk about staff and system text, tempo text, rehearsal marks, frame text. I haven't talked about that. I'll come to that in a minute. Lyrics, chord symbols, Roman numeral analysis, fingering, header and footer. Haven't talked about header and footer. Haven't talked about frame text. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But first I will look at the comments here. And the use of frames. Okay, going to come to that. Alignment breaks once you make any manual adjustment. So yes, this is true that if a chord symbol has been manually adjusted, then we consider that maybe you don't want it aligned, and that's why you adjusted it. Now that's a good point, that if you've only adjusted it horizontally, that maybe you still do want it aligned. I recommend you post that to the issue tracker. Like go to the support, go to musescore.org. So for people who haven't done this before, musescore.org, and then support issue tracker. If you come here, then you can add new issue here, and you'll add a suggestion that we go ahead and align chord symbols even if they've been adjusted horizontally only, because that does seem like a reasonable suggestion. On the other hand, it's relatively easy to align things manually. So check this out. What if I'm going to move this thing horizontally a little bit, and then let's move this note now down instead of up. And now suddenly these guys are all out of alignment. Well, all I have to do is click one, shift click the other, and then it selects. Actually, it selected all the chord symbols, not just the Roman numeral analysis. So that's actually a little bit of a drag. But I can select this range, and then right click a Roman numeral analysis, select more, and then say same subtype. Because Roman numeral analysis and chord symbols are actually the same type of element internally. They're both chord symbols internally. They just have different text styles associated with them. So when I do that, now just the Roman numeral analyses are selected in that range, and now I can align them just by increasing that Y adjustment until they all kind of start to move together. So it's relatively easy to manually align a small group of chord symbols that way. So definitely that's a thing you can do. So I'm going to come back to about frames. So the title frame, you can really put whatever you want into this thing, but these are the things that you typically would expect: a title, maybe a subtitle, and then composer information. But I added some other text here because I wanted to show that was done. Let me show you a more extreme example of something that I do all the time. So I teach a college course in music theory, or a couple different courses. This is a really basic course in theory. It takes you up from doing things like identifying notes, telling me, well, what note is this? This is G3 quarter note is the answer to that. In fact, actually, let me open the answers, shall we? If I come up, where is it? Oh, it is underscores. Actually, I can just, it's a recent score. I've opened it recently, haven't I? Finals. Nope, dang it. Sorry. When I do the answers, you'll be able to see other stuff, which is good to see. Regis, foundations, scores, exams, answers. So you'll see I have text that's actually colored and has a background, because I wanted to be able to quickly look at my answers and compare other the people's final exams to the answers here. So the question is, how did I get that yellow background? Well, I use the same technique that rehearsal marks have. Rehearsal marks have a frame on them by default, and that's because they're set to frame here. So what I did is I have this text here selected to have a frame, but then I set the frame to have a thickness of 0. So you don't actually see the frame. But by creating a frame, it allows me to select the highlight color. So when I select the highlight color, I selected a color here that's a light yellow, and then the alpha channel is set to 255. That's a Windows, no, that's a Linux thing, I guess. I think that's also what it's called on Windows. I think on Mac it's called transparency, but it's all the same thing. It's how you set this background color to be transparent, so that the text color kind of shines through it. So you can do these sorts of things. And then what I really did is I created one of those. I actually created a special palette, and you can see one there that says red. That's a staff text that I made red. Well, I can control shift drag one of these other things on here, and now I should have, oh, that's a text style. So here's the thing. Text style information doesn't move into the palette because different scores have different text styles. So you won't see text style information in the palette. You'll only see things that you've actually applied individually to text items. If you make it a style setting, you won't see that style setting in the palette. That's a kind of a deliberate thing. But it is the case that then if I apply it, it picks up that style because it's in the score. But then if I go to a different score that doesn't have that style and I add that same thing, now it's just in the style that goes with this score. So palette items, when you add them, things that were part of the style don't get added to the palette. So that's maybe something worth knowing. But things that you had made just an adjustment to that particular element, not as a style setting, and then you add it to the palette, like this red, I must have done that way. So this red, when I add it, will be added red. See, it's red. So, so I use here, I've actually hidden my frames, but let me show the frames. I have frames here, and this is frame text. So for frames, these are the vertical frames, and the vertical frames you size yourself, right? You saw me do that here. I can size this thing. As of 3.6, there will be an option to automatically size vertical frames to accommodate what's in them. And so the distinction between a vertical frame and a text frame that I'm about to show you is kind of going to go away. But if I go to the frames palette, let me close that selection filter, go to my frames palette, and add a text frame. Oops, I guess I have to add it to the whole measure, so I'll go ahead and use drag. It added it above that measure, and it was able to attach it to the previous page, so it did. If I don't want that, I can add a page break here. So Control-Enter will add a page break. Now my frame is on the next page. So anyhow, a text frame, you don't add things to it. You just start typing, and it automatically sizes itself. There's an extra line because I guess I typed a blank line. So text frames size themselves. Vertical frames give you control over the sizing, although as of 3.6, it'll also have an auto size option. But you can also independently just drag elements around in here or position them as you saw me doing using the alignment or using the offsets here. In a frame text, there's really only one piece of text. You can't add, or can you? No, you can't add multiple text items to a text frame, but you can control the position within that text frame. So if you ever want multiple columns of text, the way to do that would be to add a vertical frame right here, and then you can add one text element. This is column 2. And I add column 2 first because it's easier for me to then either center it or add an X offset to it to move it where I want. Or I could use, I'll use control, like when I have an element selected like this, control arrow moves it a staff space at a time. So that's a pretty relatively quick way of moving it precise amounts, because I like precise amounts, even though that's a staff space at a time, but it's not precise when it comes to millimeters. So maybe I just want 60 millimeters. But now I can add another text element here. And this is column 1. More. And then in column 2, 2 more, etc. So you can see you can get multiple columns of text very easily this way. So the other thing that I hadn't showed was a footer text, and as of like 3.5, so I mentioned when you add that copyright message when creating the score, it actually shows up in your score. If I double click it though, it shows you where it actually is. It's the header and the footer information that's actually in format style in the menu also. But here is where you can put in additional stuff. So copyright, if instead of this is a magic text, that means use the copyright message that's actually there in the score properties, but you can replace it. And this $P is magic text that means the page number. If you just hover your mouse cursor in one of these empty fields, you'll see It's having trouble displaying it because of my while I'm broadcasting, things are off. But anyhow, it will hold still for you. There we go, and show you what all these magic texts are that you can put in here. But I can just make my own text. Left side of footer on odd page. Hit OK, and now you'll see left side of footer on odd page displaying there in the footer. So that's how you do headers and footers. And again, to get back there or to get to the header, it could be style, header, footer. So that's that. So I've now showed you every type of text in there and talked a little bit about all the different sort of unique properties of them, as well as kind of the basic things that apply to all texts. So those are some things. So I'm guessing, yeah. So thanks, Nibbler, for answering the question about the elision symbol. And that might be exactly what you mean, or maybe you want the brace. So that special characters palette has lots and lots of stuff in it, right? So, by the way, elision characters, I think, are now going to be on the text palette. No, they're not. I actually sometimes don't remember. We keep talking about making changes, but one of the things that's added in the text palette, so in the special characters palette, if I go to press F2, under common symbols, we just added, so this is where these elision bright curved line things are. That's what you use to kind of say there's two syllables on a single word. So that's there to like do that thing, and it overlaps them because sometimes that's what you want. If you don't want them overlapped, you just put in an extra space, and now you get it not overlapped. But these characters by default in the font know to overlap. So there's that, and then there's all these other symbols here, and you can these are any font that is meant to be used for text has all sorts of crazy symbols in them here that can be added. Some of these are not present in this particular font, but there's, and that's when you see those question marks. But yeah, there's lots of symbols available that can be added here. So that's something. But in the common symbols, we're about to add a few more. I think we're about to add like the curly quotes and matching left and right quotes and maybe a couple other things. So yeah, I've gone on quite long here, but I've covered, as I said, I think everything that I wanted to cover. And Volta's okay. So there's one other kind of text, and not that you are specifically asking about that, but some text is part of a line. So if I add a line like here, Voltas here have their own text, right? Oh, the Volta by default shows up over the top staff. So when I click this, you will then, or if I add just one of these other line types, like this one here that's used for guitar specifically, but it's really just a generic text line. If I click the line, then you'll see in the inspector here are all the fields where you can change what that text is. You might not be able to see what I'm doing here, but at the lower right, there's a field for begin text. And that's the begin text. And then there's also a field for the end text. And I can type end text into there and get the end text. So there's text that's attached to lines, and it all kind of moves together as one big block like that. All right. So, yeah, extra long cafe today. But there was a lot to talk about with text. I really just wanted to throw everything in here and say that I've talked about everything about text. And yeah, there's more to talk about, I'm sure, but I've hit on all the main things. So lots that you can do with text, and using the right kind of text for the right type of purpose is kind of important because if there's any playback effect like chord symbols, you use the right type so it'll actually do the right thing in the playback. Also, as far as the layout goes, we understand certain things, like we understand that chord symbols are things you might want to align. We understand that dynamic markings get aligned along with hairpins. Like if I add a hairpin to this thing, and then I move if this D causes that dynamic marking to move down, you'll see the hairpin moves along with it because it knows that they kind of went together. This one doesn't because it's too far away. We only move an adjoining one. But anyhow, using the right kind of text for the purpose allows MuseScore to treat it properly. And like system text versus staff text, whether you want it on all the parts or not. So it's important to really understand these different types of text and what they're for, and like the different kinds of fingering that were there so they display right. Because if you do it right, the playback works the way it should be, the layout works the way it should be, and you won't have to do much, if any, manual adjustment is the idea here. So hope you've enjoyed this. Tomorrow, as you all know, hopefully I now do on Thursdays, same time, my music master class. We've been having a ton of fun with that. Looking at actual music instead of looking at MuseScore, and so I'm kind of making that division up there. So I look forward to talking more about music with people who come join us for the masterclass tomorrow, and I'll be back here next week with more Café. So thanks everyone, and I will see you soon. I have to get to my end stream thing here. I don't have a shortcut